Did you know that people are 22 times more likely to remember a story than a fact? That's right. Stories stick with us much longer than numbers or statistics ever will. In fact, studies show that we forget about 70% of the information we hear within 24 hours, but a compelling story can linger in our minds for years. Why is this? It all comes down to how our brains are wired. When we hear a story, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree. It activates areas related to emotion and memory, creating strong connections that facts simply can't match. This is why storytelling is a superpower you can use in everyday life, whether you're giving a presentation, chatting with friends, or even trying to sell an idea. So, what makes personal stories so memorable? In this video, we'll explore the real reasons behind their impact. We'll dive into strategies like embracing vulnerability, crafting emotional moments, and creating unexpected twists. By the end, you'll have the tools to turn your own experiences into captivating stories that resonate with others. Get ready to unlock the secrets of great storytelling, because it's time to make your personal stories unforgettable. Chapter 1. Unlocking the power of vulnerability. Being vulnerable in your storytelling can feel risky. But the truth is, that risk is what draws people in. Research from Brené Brown shows that vulnerability creates emotional connection. In her book Daring Greatly, she writes, "Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change." When you share your personal flaws or failures, people feel they can relate to you. They don't just see a storyteller, they see themselves. Vulnerability humanizes you. Instead of presenting yourself as perfect, showing your struggles builds trust. It's a psychological effect called the pratfall effect. Studies by psychologist Elliot Aronson found that people actually like you more when you show your imperfections. If your story is too polished, it becomes hard for people to connect with. Start by thinking of a time you failed or felt uncertain. Use that moment to frame your story. People will remember the honesty and realness, not just the plot. After all, what sticks with us more? A story about someone's success, or the obstacles they overcame along the way. Chapter 2. Emotional anchors. How to make your audience feel. People forget facts, but they remember emotions. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio discovered that emotions play a central role in memory formation. His studies showed that we can't make decisions or even remember things without emotion. So, if you want your story to stick, make your audience feel something. One powerful way to do this is through emotional anchoring. This means attaching a strong emotion to a key moment in your story. Take Pixar, for example. They're masters at this. In Toy Story 3, the scene where the characters almost fall into the incinerator grips viewers with fear and sadness. This emotional anchor makes the scene unforgettable. In your personal stories, think about what emotions your audience might experience. Is it joy? Sadness? Fear? Choose an emotion that fits the moment and lean into it. Describe it vividly, so the audience feels what you felt. For instance, instead of just saying, "I was scared," say something like, "My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel my legs shake." The more specific you are, the stronger the emotional anchor becomes. Chapter 3. Visual imprints. Painting pictures with words. We've all heard the phrase, "show, don't tell." It's common advice, but it works because our brains are wired to remember visuals better than words alone. Studies show that we remember about 80% of what we see and only 20% of what we hear. This is called the picture superiority effect. When we hear a story filled with vivid imagery, our brains create a mental movie, making it easier to recall later. For example, instead of saying, "It was a sunny day," you might say, "The sun was so bright, I had to squint just to see the road in front of me." You're painting a picture in the listener's mind. According to Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, using concrete images makes stories sticky or easier to remember. Another technique is to activate all the senses. Don't just focus on sight, add sounds, smells, and textures. If you're telling a story about cooking a family recipe, mention the sizzle of the pan, the smell of garlic, or the warmth of the kitchen. These details create a multi-sensory experience that sticks with the listener long after the story ends. If you're finding these storytelling strategies helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more tips and tricks to enhance your storytelling skills. Chapter 4, The Rhythm of Storytelling, Why Pacing and Flow Can Make or Break a Narrative. A great story isn't just about what you say, it's also about how you say it. The pacing and flow of your story can either pull people in or push them away. Think of storytelling as music. The tempo, the pauses, and the changes in intensity are what keep listeners engaged. In The Storytelling Animal, author Jonathan Gottschall explains how stories have a natural arc, with peaks and valleys that guide the audience's emotions. Too slow, and you'll lose them. Too fast, and they won't have time to absorb key moments. The secret is in finding that sweet spot between excitement and tension. One way to master pacing is by using pauses. A well-placed pause can create suspense or give your audience time to process an important moment. When you pause after a dramatic point, it lets the weight of your words sink in. Similarly, building up to a climax with faster pacing can create excitement. Don't rush through your story, let it breathe where it needs to and pick up speed where it counts. A simple example, if you're telling a story about missing a flight, don't start with the airport. Begin with the frantic morning. Describe the rushing, the panicked search for keys, the ticking clock. Use shorter sentences to build tension, then slow down when the climax hits. This creates a rhythm that draws your listeners in and keeps them engaged. Chapter 5, Relatability, Crafting, Me Too, Moments. One of the best ways to make your story memorable is by making it relatable. When people see themselves in your story, they feel a connection. In fact, research shows that people are 22 times more likely to remember a story than a fact. Why? Because stories engage the brain in ways facts alone don't. They spark imagination, emotion, and, most importantly, empathy. Relatability doesn't mean your story has to be universal. You don't need everyone to have experienced the exact same thing as you. Instead, focus on shared feelings and experiences. For example, if you're telling a story about losing your first job, you can tap into common feelings of failure, uncertainty, and starting over. Most people haven't had your exact experience, but they've felt something similar. In Wired for Story, Lisa Cron writes, "The more specific a story, the more universal its appeal." This might sound counterintuitive, but it works because humans connect to emotions first, not facts. So, even if your story is about a niche event, the emotions you felt, fear, joy, anger, are relatable. When crafting relatable moments, use language that feels inclusive. Instead of saying, "When I was terrified," you might say, "You know that feeling when your stomach drops." This shifts the focus from you to your audience, inviting them to step into your shoes. The more your listeners see themselves in your story, the more likely they are to remember it. Chapter 6, The Subtle Art of Surprise, How Twists and Unexpected Endings Hook Your Audience. People love surprises. Our brains are wired to pay attention when something unexpected happens. This is why twists in stories are so memorable. Think about it, how often do you remember a movie where the ending caught you completely off guard? That element of surprise sticks with us because it disrupts our expectations. According to research from Emory University, surprise activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine. This chemical not only makes us feel good but also helps us remember the moment more vividly. When telling a personal story, adding an unexpected twist can leave a lasting impression on your audience. The twist doesn't have to be dramatic or life-changing. It can be as simple as a shift in perspective. For example, if you're telling a story about a family dinner that went wrong, you might build up the tension, only to reveal that the disaster actually led to one of the best nights you've had together. This element of surprise can change the tone and keep your audience on their toes. In Made to Stick, Chip and Dan Heath emphasize that the unexpected is one of the core principles of memorable storytelling. They explain that by breaking the pattern, whether through an unexpected outcome or a shift in emotion, you keep your story fresh and engaging. But the key is balance. Too many twists, and the story can feel forced. Too few, and it can become predictable. When crafting your surprise, think about how you can lead your audience in one direction, only to turn the story on its head at just the right moment. That twist, even if small, is what will make your story unforgettable. If you enjoyed these storytelling insights, subscribe for more tips to enhance your storytelling journey.